Welcome to the Real Estate Investing Podcast, where we help you unlock your potential freedom through land investing, real estate investing, and entrepreneurship. Hey everyone, this is episode 126 of the Real Estate Investing Podcast, discussing how to guarantee land flipping success. I'm your host, Daniel Apke, joined again by my brother and business partner, Ron Apke. Before we get into the show, let's go over questions from one of our featured Discord members. Today's question is from Deshaun. Deshaun asked, is anyone noticing a decline in inventory sales of property? Maybe it's just where I am, but last year I did a market analysis on about 4 or 5 different counties, and I'm seeing those numbers drastically drop because of the amount of for sale sold over the last couple of months have changed. How do you adjust to know what good, quotation, good movement is in a county? What numbers are acceptable? And Ron, before you get into this question specifically, dumb this down a little bit for everyone to understand.
Yeah, so what Deshaun's basically asking, so right now it's January, I don't know, I think it's 31st, 2023. Deshaun's basically saying 12 months ago, theoretically, the market in these 4 counties, there was more properties selling in the market versus for sale. And right now, maybe it's more even where there's less property selling and maybe inventory is growing a little bit. That's how I'm interpreting it. I don't know the full interpretation of everything he said, Daniel, but that's how I'm interpreting. Now there's more for sale on the market. Things are taking a little longer to sell, and there's less properties that have sold. To answer his question, I still think these are good areas to hit. You have the data, you understand the data. What's going to happen to Sean in areas like this and a lot of areas in the country that are slowing down is you're going to be able to acquire more land because there are going to be more sellers who understand the market, who know like, wow, we're in the recession. My land's going to probably, the last 12 months, maybe the value's gone down. The next 12 months, it's going to go down more than likely. So you have an edge up on the sellers, in my opinion. I think you don't necessarily adjust the way you're choosing counties. Maybe try to choose a little hotter counties so they sell quicker. But if you've evaluated these counties, I wouldn't worry about that. Adjust your pricing accordingly. Understand. I know Deshaun's done a lot of cold calling from my understanding, Daniel. So make sure you kind of understand what the market's saying. I still think it's good areas to hit from what you're saying. But try to buy a little cheaper is kind of what I'm getting at.
Definitely I compare the for sale to the sold a lot because what I'm seeing, Ron, and I've done this on coaching calls recently too, on one-on-one consultation calls, um, you see for sale even lower than the recently sold, which is super interesting. And I was trying to figure out reasons why, but you see price dropping in some, and then it's area to area. So you just really need to keep an eye on what's going on by looking at the for sale versus the recently sold or sold 6-12 months ago, because you may see breaks there in certain slower areas. But other than that, let's get into the show. Today, we're talking about how to guarantee land flipping success. We kept this short and simple for you guys. We have 3 reasons, 3 ways to guarantee success for land flipping. And this is from analyzing our members, Ron, from analyzing successful members versus not successful. You guys have probably heard us say these things over and over again. It's a lot of good value in this episode. It is going to be shorter, but let's hop it right into it, Ron.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever put these into one episode, all 3 of these things. A lot of people who started 6 months ago might like listen to these 3 things and think like, oh, I'm slipping up on this. I got to keep up on this. This episode's going to be for everyone. If you haven't started, this is something to think about for sure. The number one thing we're going to start with is consistency. I know for a fact this does not just lie in land investing space in terms of being a successful land flipper. Consistency is the key to success in so many things in life, where you're just taking small chunks out each day and you're making some momentum each day, opposed to trying to work. Some people try to work 7 a.m., 7 p.m. after they get home from work to 2 a.m. They can do that for 2-3 days, and then they are just done for the next week, whatever it is. And then they might get 30 minutes in. Try to do something each day. Stay consistent with the business model. And like I said, this does not just go with land flipping. It is everything, in my opinion. It's one thing I've struggled with where I try to overload things on the front end, and then it's like, crap, I haven't done this. And then I look back and I haven't done this in 2 weeks. What are your kind of thoughts on that, Dan?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there. It doesn't need to be a mass amount of work every single day. If you're doing this as a side hustle, put an hour in, put 2 hours in. Maybe you'll have to skip some days because life, put an hour in the next day. You do this consistently, an hour a day on average, you'll look back in 6 months and have made tremendous progress, Ron. And that's the biggest thing. People do not understand. It doesn't take a lot of hours. It's just more about putting your hours in the right place. And what's that term I'm looking for, Ron, where you use the amount of time appropriately that you have, that you give yourself? Yeah, Parkinson's law, where you give yourself an hour to do something or 2 hours to do something, you fit it in that hour, you find a way rather than giving yourself 8 hours to do a couple things. Like you can get so much done in an hour, 2 hours a day. And if this is your side hustle, you have to find the time, whether it's in the morning, at night. When I first started, Ron, I don't know what yours was like, but my schedule was pretty open. I knew I was going to work at some point. I would try to wake up early a lot of times to work when I could. And if I didn't wake up early, I was working at night pretty late, or just after work or whatever, just putting in an hour, 2 hours. And like I said, 6 months, 3 months go by, you do that consistently, you will have an operating business.
Yes. So Parkinson's law basically says like you are going to complete the work in how much time you have allotted. If you're like, I have the entire Saturday to price, it's going to take you the entire Saturday. If you say I've from Saturday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. to price, that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to finish it then. You're going to finish it in that hour. And I think one of the key things with this being because a lot of people are starting out with 9 to 5s and stuff like that. If you're working a 9 to 5, like have that 5 p.m. I know some people have families and different things, but have what you shouldn't be thinking about what you're going to do with your land business after you're done with your 9 to 5. You should already have out whether it's Sunday night, you write out like Monday, I need to price this. Tuesday, I need to make sure I have room to call back sellers and evaluate all the deals. Have it written out from 6 to 7 p.m. tonight. That's all you have to do, honestly. 6 to 7 p.m. every Wednesday, you guys should be coming in the webinars and learning on that. That's one thing everyone, whether you have a 9 to 5 or not. But laying out the timeline on what you're doing each day is so, so important in becoming more efficient.
The busier you are in life, the more important that is, I think, especially if you have families, jobs, a lot of other things going on. You have to plan it out, get it on paper, write down your schedule. And I'm not saying plan out your quarter, guys. Like plan out a few days ahead. Just know when that day ends what you have to do. You don't want it to be 5 o'clock and know you're working 5 to 6 and spend the first 15, 20 minutes going off, just trying to figure out what to do. Like have your stuff planned out. And Ron, before we get, you brought up being in our webinars, which is a free, great resource. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But before we get into that, let's take a quick break. If you guys could please like our Apple podcast and give us a review, we'd really, really appreciate that. It really helps us spread our mission and it keeps this podcast completely ad free. So go into Apple Podcast if you guys could and give us a review. We really appreciate it. Going back,
Awesome.
Ron, let's talk about
Sorry, go ahead,
continued
Dan.
education. Yeah, let's talk back about continued education because we were getting into that. We talked about the webinar a little bit, but these are the traits we see. These are the things we see our successful members doing. We're not just making this up. Oh, consistency. This is actually how like what we see, Ron. So let's talk about continued education.
Yeah, that is, these are all, we only chose three things, and everyone who's been successful that I've seen has done these three things relatively well. Obviously, there's slip ups, that's normal, but continued education. Again, I think this is, I'm going back to it, but I think this is important in anything you're trying to be successful in. If it's Kobe Bryant, like Kobe Bryant's not just working on the same moves forever, like he's trying to continually learn his whole career. Any good athlete is doing that. And then in the business world, in the land world, like educating yourself with YouTube videos, educating yourself by being in our webinars, networking with people is educating, being active in our Discord. We have so much, and that's the thing. If you're a member, we have recorded modules from all of our webinars back probably a year ago or so. So there's probably 100 hours of recorded webinars of us just going over deal. And one thing that I heard, Dano, I know you kind of listen to Alex Ramosi a little bit. And he says a lot of great things. One thing he says is it only takes 20 hours to be really good at something, and that kind of goes with the consistency thing, more so than this. Like 20 focused hours, though, that's the thing. Like you need to continually focus on this, actually putting real hours into this. But all the content out there with YouTube, with podcasts, like there's so many places to learn. Our community has 900 people and growing. Uh, Network for sure.
There's absolutely no excuse to not be educated. If you're staying consistent, these, like you said, these go hand in hand. If you're staying consistent, you're going to learn, you're going to be continuing education. Like that's a part of staying consistent. These all blend together, Ron. But there's so many free resources, whether it's our YouTube channels, our free webinars, our lunch and learn. Like there's just so many ways to learn and continue to educate yourself. So there's really no excuse with that one. Other than that, Ron, let's hop into the last one that we chose. So far we have consistency, continuing education, and with consistency also consistency. One thing I wanted to bring up, Ron, there's also grit that's involved in consistency because it's not easy to be consistent. To be consistent, you're going to have to get over, you might be sick. You might have to work through a sickness. You might be negative cash flow or not had a deal in a month. You're going to have to still send out mail. You might, your business partner might have left you. You got to find a way to stay consistent. Consistency is very hard to do with emotions that are coming up. You just got to get through it with grit. So I think consistency and like that grit, Ron, really play hand in hand. And I wanted to bring that up because that's a trait that we see that align with all three of these is the grit. That's more of a trait. But the last one, Ron, is adaptability. Let's hop into that.
Yeah, I mean, adaptability in this business, as you guys know, and the most common question we get every Wednesday for our webinars is, what do you got? What's going on with the market? What's going on with the market? Can you still sell properties? Do I sell properties right now like I did 12, 18 months ago? I'd be lying. We'd be lying if we said like, yeah, properties are flying off the markets like they did 12, 18 months ago. But we are also we are they're not selling the same. We're selling differently. We need to change our strategies. Price is more of a factor. We need to respect every buyer out there. Um, we need to market better. We need to put more marketing money in there. We need to buy cheaper. We need to go into different markets. We're adapting. Like we could go in slow markets, quotes, for those of you listening on audio, 12 months ago, 18 months ago, and things would still sell fast. Now, if you go into those slow markets, like you're going to have to sell things at 70, 75% of market value to get them off the shelf. So yeah, I mean, things are always changing in real estate. There's going to be strategies changing. You need to be able to adapt to the business as it changes.
Yeah, there's kind of two different ways I look at this, Ron. It's almost like a macro, like you're saying, like the environment you're in, and a micro. And I think, like Ron said, like just small adaptation, like maybe you sent mail somewhere and it's not working, or you're getting really bad feedback, or you put property on the market for sale and it's very slow. Maybe you want to leave that area. Maybe you need to adapt from where you're sending your mail, how you're pricing, minor adjustments. Maybe you always use realtors and you figured out it's slowing down your process. Adapt and try selling some yourself, taking those risks, adapting to what's going on, adapt to make your business better. And then on the macro standpoint, just what's going on, like Ron said, in the environment, understanding it might take a little bit longer, pricing accordingly without having the data to really support it necessarily, pricing from a macro standpoint on what the macro environment's telling us. We need to be in hotter counties now. We understand we might be selling at 85, 90% now. Understanding the macro and the micro and bringing them together to really adapt to your business, Ron.
Yeah, for sure. I like the way you put that a lot. And it's the truth of it because it's just sometimes, and if once you've been doing this for 6, 8 months, and you'll be making adjustments and adapting without even knowing it. It's just going to be things like Daniel said, like as small as like, okay, this area, there aren't any realtors. I need to adapt. I cannot rely on realtors. I need to maybe put a system in so I can sell properties myself or hire an employee to sell properties myself. Yeah, you got to be quick with it. Like, I think that's part of adapting in business, Daniel, is the taking action part and being willing to adapt without overthinking it. Because sometimes you're going to try to adapt, try to change, make changes, and it's not going to work. It just do not overcommit when you're making changes. Commit a little bit, test the water, see what's going on there. But you need to take action. You cannot overthink some of these changes. And the market will pass you by, people will pass you by if you're not adapting fast enough in business in general.
And that example that I just pulled around was from a call today I was on. It was someone that's a member of our program, and they were talking about how they're deciding not to use realtors for their next three in a county, for their next three listings that they're buying. They're buying three properties. And this has been a successful member, Ron. And There we go. Adaptability. They're trying out not using realtor. They said they think they're slowing things down and not getting back with leads as quick as they should be. So they're adapting, trying a new thing, trying to sell themselves. That's what the whole call was about. They wanted to understand the process and the questions that come up when selling a property. And that's a successful member. That's an example of them adapting right there. And I wanted to throw that out because that is a real life example right there. It's micro focused. It's on their business directly right now. They think it's slowing down. They had an issue, almost a bottleneck kind of deal, and they're getting ahead of it and adapting, Ron.
That's really cool. No, I was in the background kind of listening to that call a little bit and just hearing the way he talked, and like, he's already been successful. He's only 2-3 months in, and making those changes without like second guessing himself is so important. And it's I guess it doesn't really go with consistency, but just those quick changes are that's cool to hear. That's a good example, Dan.
Yeah, and if you bring it goes back to grit too. Like if you bring these back to traits, these aren't traits we're talking about. Consistency, continue. These are things to do. But if you bring these all back to actually traits around that get people through these, like you're not fearless, but you understand you got to go through the fear. Change is hard, change is scary, change is unknown. Like you're stepping into the unknown. So a lot of these come back to just understanding those traits and getting through them anyways. When you know it's the right move, you got to make it, even if it's a little bit scary. Ron, I don't have much more to add to those three: consistency, continued education, and adaptability. I love it.
You know what we didn't talk about this entire time, and people who have been listening for the last 8 months, 12 months, are be like, "Wow, they didn't talk about mail once with consistency." We were talking about more on like the working and doing working consistently, but we like the consistency of like sending mail is something we talk about so much. I was thinking about that when we were talking about continued education. Like, wow, we didn't talk about mail once with consistency, and that is the lifeblood of the business. For those of you who are new, and for those of you who are old, I know we've talked about that quite a bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. It didn't even it didn't even cross my mind either. But that's a part of it. Like if you guys have heard us talk before, we talk about mail. You got to send mail. You got to be consistent with mail. You got to be consistent with everything. Mail's one major part of it. So yeah, be consistent on all aspects, Ron. But other than that, thank you guys for joining. If you guys have already not, please leave us a review on Apple Podcast. It really helps our business grow and spread our mission and keep this ad free. Other than that, thank you for joining, and we'll see you next episode.